This has not been an easy IEM to review. I will admit, I went into it already fascinated by the technology of the new Aful MagicOne. This is an IEM from a company that has pretty much made its name, practically overnight, with its technical innovations that allow hybrid IEMs to reach full potential and a more coherent sound signature through the use of sophisticated crossovers and physical tuning tubes in a 3D printed housing, first in the Performer 5 with a dynamic driver and 4 BAs, and then in the Performer 8 with a dynamic driver and 7 BAs distributed across the sound spectrum, and an even more complex set of tuning tubes. Now we find that, apparently, all the time they were developing those sophisticated, groundbreaking hybrids, they were working, in some back room or obscure corner of the lab, on a completely different solution for producing a coherent sound signature. If the problem is balancing and blending different drivers and types of drivers into a unified sound, one solution, obviously, is to only use one driver. There are lots of single dynamic driver IEMs, from entry-level to kilobuck, and some of them are very well respected. So that's been done. What about a single BA? No one has done that yet, at least not in a way that satisfies music lovers, and the problems are so huge that it seems totally unlikely. So of course Aful, being Aful, had to give it a try. According to a document they are circulating to reviewers and interested audiophiles, they spent 3 years redesigning your standard BA, improving its physical structure to allow it to faithfully produce all the frequencies that make up our music, and then, just because they could, having already developed the tuning tube technology for their hybrids, they designed a backside acoustic chamber and a long tube resonance structure and coiled it all up so it would fit inside an average-size IEM housing to reinforce the bass to something close to what a dynamic driver produces. Still, they were not happy with the treble extension of their new BA, so they developed what amounts to an analog signal processing array, which they call SE Math, to extend the treble performance of the MagicOne. Really fascinating stuff. Cutting edge. Fun if you're into that kind of thing. And I suspect more music lovers are than are not. So then, give it a smaller than average, transparent, semi-custom shell that shows off that single BA, and an eye-catching, minimalistic frost patterns on ice faceplate. Package it with a very nice cable, your choice of 3.5 single-ended or 4.4 balanced, the same metal hockey puck case as the Performer 5, and a decent selection of ear tips. Box it up in a nice box and price it at $140, and see how it goes. I always wonder how these pricing decisions are made. My first difficulty in reviewing the MagicOne was that my first unit was defective. Out of the box it sounded terrible, like listening to the neighbor's cheap kitchen countertop radio through an open window across the yard. And then it would suddenly improve, and then it would go back to thin and awful, and then it would seem to work again. After a few days of that, I took advantage of Hi-Fi Go's Amazon store to request a replacement. To their credit, I had my replacement, no questions asked, within 2 days, and it was a whole different IEM. Well, obviously it looked the same. It had the same excellent accessories, but it sounded completely different. Then, too, I had a lot of trouble with ear tip selection. The two styles included, both narrow bore, likely intended to reinforce the bass even more, caused the IEM to interact strongly with the pulse in my ear, or my head, to reinforce the sound of my heartbeat. So I had that sound an ultrasound makes to represent the heartbeat of an unborn infant in my ears constantly, even without music playing, and running behind the music all the time I listened. I went through what I thought was every ear tip in my collection, from spin fits and spiral dots to K7s to Danu SNS, and even those green and gray ones from Penon, as well as a lot of unnamed ear tips that came with other IEMs. Some reduced the pulse sound, but none eliminated it. Finally, only a few days ago, I tried the medium-sized TRI Clarions, which I ordered for my particularly difficult-to-fit Penon Fan 2s. The Fan 2s are an IEM that sound best when deep in the ear, but with a shell shape that makes that difficult with all but a very few tips. What a difference the TRI clarions made to the Magic Ones. The pulse sound was greatly reduced, though I lost no bass. In fact, the bass became more defined and refined, while the top end really opened up, improving both the sense of space and precision of instrument placement, making the Magic One sound considerably different. Now, this may be something to do with my ears and my ears alone, or with the placement of the arteries near my ear, but that pulse sound certainly inspired me to work harder at tip selection than I normally do. For me, at least, the key was getting the inner side of the shell right back against the wall of the concha, and the tips inserted as deeply as they would go, while still maintaining a good seal. I've said right along that your ear canal is as much a part of the transducer as the drivers in the shell, and that it needs tuning too, especially the right insertion depth, to realize the best performance from any IEM. Some IEMs are more forgiving. Tips and insertion depth make a difference, but not that big a one. And then some, like the Magic One, the insertion depth and shell fit make an almost unbelievable difference in the sound of the IEM. After seeing what the TRI clarions did for the sound of the Magic One, I tried the Danu SNS one more time. They also cut down on the pulse noise and provide the same improvement in sound on the Magic Ones. Wide bore tips, then. Now, finally, with the right tips, I understand the magic. The bass. Not regular BA bass. This bass is solid. Maybe not as solid as a 10 or even an exceptional 8mm dynamic driver, but so close that when listening to music, you would never believe it is BA bass, let alone from a single BA driver. In fact, when listening to most tracks, you're not thinking about the driver configuration at all. You can just relax and enjoy the music, even on truly bass-heavy tracks like Bass Drops from Nenad Vasilik or From a Standstill by Bellasonus. You're not, honestly, going to be looking for any more bass. True, the bass does not have quite the same physical impact as a dynamic driver bass, but again, that's not something you notice unless you're doing intentional comparisons between IEMs. While the music is playing, the bass is completely satisfying. The sub-bass is there, not certainly passing train rumbly as on some IEMs, but nicely textured and detailed, and the mid-bass has a strong drive and push, enough punch to satisfy any but the true bass heads among us. If you don't believe me, get a Magic One, find the right ear tips, and listen to Poem of the Chinese Drum by Hukman Yim. The drums and other percussion are so enjoyable, so natural sounding, that I, personally, do not need or want any more bass. Vocals and instrumentals are smooth and pleasant. Pleasant can sometimes be a wishy-washy word, but I mean it in the best sense here, with no wishy-washy implied. Pleasant with bells on, or if I was writing it, I might write it with stars at the beginning and the end, and an exclamation point, like this: pleasant. I might even call the vocals and instrumentals on the Magic One luminous, solid-bodied, but with enough air to make you tingle when Alison Krauss or Diana Krall sings, and to draw out every subtle inflection of folk voices like Clara Dillon, or the women from I'm With Her. Male vocals are rich and smooth without being smothery, and still have a bit of rasp when needed. Robert Plant, Jeff Castellucci, Ave Kaplan, the men from Home Free, or Perly Ilotre. Or again, the folk voices captured on Nothing But Green Willow, all clear as tea-colored mountain streams, or rich as dark roast hand-ground single-bean coffee. Both male and female vocals have a nice heft to them, always a pleasing presence. Guitars, pianos, cellos, violins are all rendered faithfully, with good detail, as natural sounding as any IEM I've yet heard, and more natural than most, leaving nothing to be desired as you listen, no matter the genre or the track. And the mid-range is slightly more forward in the mix than some, which can be refreshing. This extends from the conversing acoustic guitars on Nothing But Green Willow to the cellos on Fishman's Vivaldi concertos and the violin on Julian's reimagined Bach or Keith Garrett's Explosive, the piano on Brooklyn Duo's Vivaldi's Summer, and even to Eric Tingsatt's electric guitars. This is a real accomplishment, a silky smooth but still spicy mid-range. To really appreciate what the Magic One can do, listen to Adele's Someone Like You, such a voice, or crank up Jeff Castellucci's Icy Fire. Treble, cymbals, hi-hats, chimes, bells, claps are all there where they belong in the mix, crisp, but again, somehow smooth and lovely. And you can turn the music up as loud as you like. The Magic One never becomes shrill or unpleasant. Before trying the TRI Clarion and the SNS tips, I would have said that the sense of space provided by the Magic Ones is about average for IEMs in this price range. Not spectacular, but not closed in or disappointing in any way, and instrument placement, again, without comparison to any other IEM, is pleasing, that's without the stars, if not pinpoint sharp. With the wide bore tips and deep insertion, however, everything opens out, and the stage is noticeably wider and deeper, almost as spacious as I have heard, and instrument placement becomes considerably more crisp and sharp. Impressive indeed. An orchestral piece like Die Feldermuse by Daniel Barenboim and the Vienna Philharmonic really brings out everything the Magic One has to offer. If you have the right volume level for the opening bars, then it is just spectacular. And I should say right here, before I forget it, that the Magic One is not easy to drive. I have to turn it up about 6 clicks on a 60-step volume control, 10 clicks out of 100 on my desktop DACs, to match the volume of any of my more efficient IEMs. And it's not just a matter of loudness. The Magic One really comes alive at higher volumes. The bass gains presence, the treble and stage open out, and the whole experience just gets more enjoyable. It definitely prefers a high gain setting when it's available, no matter what your listening level is. At the same time, you can turn it up louder than you might listen to other IEMs, since it never shows any signs of harshness or distortion. In my experience, I found that adjusting the volume until the bass is satisfying brings the best sound from the rest of the spectrum, even though it is louder than I might normally listen. Overall, the Magic One seems to be exactly what Aful was working toward, and what they're advertising: a smooth, rich, highly coherent sound that makes music enjoyable to listen to. Many, I would suspect, will find this IEM as enjoyable, and maybe, depending on what you value and what you listen to, more enjoyable than either the Performer 5 or the 8. I certainly do. I respect and admire what both the P5 and the P8 do, but for extended listening sessions, if given the choice, I will listen to the Magic One. And that's saying a lot for a $140 single BA IEM. It is maybe less suited to super bass-heavy genres and those who love having their brains tenderized by their music. But other than that, great job on the technical innovation front, Aful. However, the Magic One does not exist in a vacuum. It has to be compared to other IEMs that have come before it, and to other more conventional designs in its price range. At $140, Aful has placed it near the top of one of the most competitive segments of the IEM market, and in my opinion, which I've shared before, see my $150 endgame video, the segment where you currently get the most value, the best sound, the most enjoyment from your music, at a price many of us can still feel good about spending on an IEM. I mean, the whole point of magic is to do something impossible. To be really magical, the Magic One has to do more than provide a seemingly impossible amount of bass and a smooth treble from a single BA. More than any technical trick, no matter how impressive, it has to reproduce music in such a satisfying way that it can hold its own or even stand out at $140 in a sea of competitive IEMs. Is that a magic too far, even for Aful? Let's take 3 current, more conventional IEMs for comparison. We'll begin with the Canera Celeste Phoenix Call, since it is closest in price at $130. The Phoenix Call also has an unusual driver configuration, which includes an 8mm dynamic, 2 BAs, and 2 microplanars, compared using the same sources and the same tracks. With the Magic One, the Phoenix Call is much edgier, perhaps somewhat more detailed and precise, and maybe somehow a tiny bit more dynamic. It has, as I described it in my review, a little rim of light at the leading edge of every note, like a lightsaber, But I have also come to appreciate the swoosh of light trailing every note. It's brilliant without being brittle. The bass is physical. You not only hear it, you feel it. Every note pulsing your eardrums and resonating in your head. In comparison, the MagicOne is smooth, considerably more coherent, and less demanding to listen to. Guitar and violin strings in particular have a sharper edge and can sound clearer and crisper on some tracks on the Phoenix Call than on the MagicOne, but only in direct comparison. Which is better? Only you can say, and I will admit that I often prefer the slightly smoother version of the MagicOne. So let's move on to something a bit more ordinary, at least in design. The SIMGOT EM6L Phoenix is what is becoming, since the Aful Performer 5 broke the ground, a pretty standard high-performance hybrid design with 1 dynamic and 4 BAs, priced at $30 less than the MagicOne. The Phoenix has some of the smoothness of the MagicOne when compared to the Phoenix Call. I described the difference between the Phoenix and the Phoenix Call as the difference between medium roast coffee and light roast coffee. The Phoenix is fuller-bodied and richer than the Phoenix Call, but that fullness masks some of the finest nuances and more subtle flavor notes that the lighter roast brings to the palate. Both are very satisfying IEMs, but the Phoenix might be more suitable for everyday listening, the cup that just satisfies every time. Not too dark, not too light, just right. Maybe not the most exciting, but never out of place with any meal, or between meals if it comes to that. When compared to the MagicOne, with the right tips, at least the right tips for me, the Phoenix still has a more physical base, but somehow less textured. And no, the Phoenix is not quite as smooth, and again, not quite as coherent as the MagicOne, but it's not far off either. To my ear, the MagicOne and the Phoenix both provide a pleasant, satisfying listening experience, but the MagicOne has a smidgen of extra enjoyment. Pleasant. Does that justify the extra $30 for the MagicOne? Again, it's your wallet. Of course, you can order the MagicOne with an excellent 4.4mm balanced cable, and if you want balanced on the Phoenix, you'll have to buy an aftermarket cable, so there goes at least part of your $30 savings. Finally, let's take a look at another single-driver IEM, the $90 planar magnetic Melody from Kiwi Ears. The more I listen to the Melody, the more I appreciate what Kiwi Ears has been able to do. Their own brand of magic brings a bass as deep and as loud and almost as impactful as the best dynamic drivers, way louder than many, and maintains the technical abilities of the planar driver in the mids and highs. It does not have a spectacular sense of space, but it equals either the Phoenix or the Phoenix Call, and is, maybe sometimes on some tracks, the equal of the MagicOne. And it has the same crisp instrument placement as the Phoenix Call, for $90. True, its accessory package is pitiful compared to the MagicOne, but should that make a $50 difference? Yes, well again, that's something that only you and your ears and your wallet can answer. To extend the coffee metaphor, we would have to switch from roast to include coffee blends. The Melody is not only dark roast, it's lava blend, intentionally emphasizing the dark flavor notes while the lighter notes float above. The SIMGOT EM6L is still your single-bean medium roast, rich and balanced, and the Phoenix Call is still a single-bean light roast, giving full expression to the more subtle flavor notes that distinguish that particular bean. And that makes the MagicOne, in coffee terms, a fine, medium roast blend, created specifically to bring out the smoothness, to emphasize the interplay of the flavor notes, light and dark, deep and subtle, into one satisfying taste experience with no harsh edges. My feeling is that the special effort needed to produce the impressive bass in the MagicOne, and especially the SE math signal processing needed to smooth out the treble, ends up giving the MagicOne a slightly processed sound. Not a bad thing. Smooth and coherent is just the top priority. I notice it most when comparing the edges of guitar and violin string notes, or the rasp in a male voice, or the cracked glass edge of some female voices when they reach up high. Those edges are still there in the MagicOne, but they do not call attention to themselves as they do in, say, the Phoenix Call. Aful assures me that their SE math is different and better than conventional digital signal processing. They say that DSP adjusts the digital signal before it reaches the IEM, before it is converted to analog, while SE math adjusts the analog sound of the BA itself by responding to the musical signal in real time, allowing for better compensation and a closer reproduction of the actual musical source. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that gets the gist of what they told me. Still, processing is processing, and it might be expected to leave some kind of mark, even if the end result is so pleasing to the ear. The songs I use for primary comparison between these four IEMs are Across Light and Time by Asa Afat and David Arkenstone for instrumental, and Quattro, The World Drifts In, the duet by Robert Plant and Alison Krauss from Raise the Roof, for vocals. These tracks are exceptionally well recorded and put any IEM to a real test. I should say that the difference in performance between these four IEMs is very subtle and at least partially a matter of preference. When I'm not switching back and forth, listening to the same track over and over and trying to compare the differences, I can be happy listening to any one of them for hours, through a varied playlist or album by album. If I had to pick just one of them for an extended listening session, or forever, as in I can only keep one, or as in I can only afford to buy one in the first place, then it would have to be either the SIMGOT EM6L Phoenix or the Aful MagicOne. I cannot emphasize enough how important tip selection is to the MagicOne. Without the right tips, I would say the MagicOne is no more than equal in performance to the SIMGOT. But with the right tips and the right insertion depth, the MagicOne comes alive and is, at least to my ear, slightly more enjoyable to listen to, making it my clear choice at its price point. And I would also, as I said, for extended or everyday listening, choose it over either the Performer 5 or the Performer 8. The IEM market is intensely, some might say insanely competitive right now, and it seems to get more competitive every day. The sound, the musical enjoyment that used to be only available in IEMs at $500 and up, while that level of enjoyment is now, in my opinion, readily available at under $150, and even in several IEMs around the $100 price point. This is good. But it makes magic harder and harder to pull off. The MagicOne is a huge technical achievement, and Aful deserves all the credit that will undoubtedly come to them. If there are technical innovation awards in the IEM world, Aful and the MagicOne deserves at least a couple of them. But as an IEM in a competitive market, the MagicOne has to stand on its merits as a pleasant-sounding, smooth, highly coherent IEM with enough spice to justify the magic name. I will not say another smooth, highly coherent IEM, because that particular combination is the magic that MagicOne brings. But does it break new ground for musical enjoyment at its price point? My ears say yes, just yes. It is magically pleasant, magically enjoyable. Not, apparently, a magic too far for Aful after all. Worth every penny and maybe more. So, yes, I'll have a helping of magic for one. Thank you, Aful. Pleasant indeed.